The deep hum of the engines vibrated through the USS Horizon as it drifted through the darkness of space. Captain Frank Miller stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the vast emptiness before him. The research vessel had been exploring the outer reaches of the solar system for 3 months now, and the crew was eager for something interesting to happen. "Captain, I'm picking up unusual energy readings," said Lisa Brown, the science officer. Her fingers moved quickly across her screen as she analyzed the data. "About 2 million kilometers ahead. It's like nothing I've ever seen before." Frank moved to her station and looked over her shoulder. "Natural phenomenon?" Lisa shook her head. "No, sir. The pattern is too regular. I think it's artificial." "Put it on the main screen," Frank ordered. The large display at the front of the bridge flickered to life, showing a distant point of light that grew larger as the ship's computers enhanced the image. It was a vessel, unlike any human craft. Its hull gleamed with a metallic blue sheen, and strange appendages extended from its core like the legs of a spider. "First contact," Frank whispered. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Humanity had been searching for signs of intelligent life for centuries. Now, on this ordinary Tuesday, they had found it. "Should I try to communicate with them, Captain?" asked Alan Garcia, the communications specialist. His voice trembled slightly with excitement. Frank nodded. "Standard greeting package. All languages, mathematical sequences, the works." The bridge fell silent as Alan sent the message. Minutes passed. Frank could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. "They're responding," Alan exclaimed. "I'm receiving a transmission. They're speaking English." "How is that possible?" asked Samantha Wright, the chief engineer. She had joined them on the bridge after hearing about the discovery. "They must have intercepted our broadcasts," Lisa suggested. "Earth has been sending signals into space for over a century." A voice came through the speakers, deep and slightly raspy. "Greetings, vessel from Earth. We are the Vrexians. We have been observing your world from afar and wish to establish peaceful relations." Frank stepped forward. "This is Captain Frank Miller of the USS Horizon. We welcome you on behalf of humanity." "We invite you to board our vessel for discussions," the voice replied. "We can share knowledge and resources." Jack Nelson, the security officer, moved closer to Frank. "I don't like this, Captain," he said quietly. "They're too eager. And did you notice the movement patterns of their ship? They've been positioning themselves between us and Earth." Frank considered Jack's concerns. The security officer had good instincts, honed by years in special forces before joining the space program, but this was too important an opportunity to miss. "We'll accept," Frank decided. "But we'll be careful. Jack, you're with me. Lisa, you too. And Dr. Taylor, in case we need medical expertise." Eric Taylor, the ship's medical officer, nodded from his position near the door. "I'll prepare a kit. Samantha, you have command while we're gone," Frank told his chief engineer. "If anything seems off, don't hesitate to pull back and contact Earth." Within the hour, the 4 crew members boarded their shuttle and approached the alien vessel. As they drew closer, they could see more details of its strange design. The hull was covered in what looked like scales, giving it an organic appearance despite its clearly technological nature. A section of the hull slid open, revealing a docking bay. Frank guided the shuttle inside, where gravity suddenly took hold, pulling them gently to the floor. "Artificial gravity," Lisa noted, checking her instruments. "And the atmosphere is similar to Earth's, but with higher oxygen content." They exited the shuttle cautiously. The interior of the alien ship was dimly lit with a reddish glow. The walls pulsed slightly, as if the ship itself was breathing. "Welcome, humans," said a tall figure as it emerged from the shadows. The Vrexian stood at least 7 feet tall with a reptilian appearance. Its skin was covered in blue-green scales and a frill extended from its neck. Yellow eyes with vertical pupils studied them with interest. "I am Drexvor, Grand Hunter of the Vrexian Confederation," it said. "Please, follow me to our meeting chamber." Frank nodded to the alien, then glanced at his team. Jack's hand rested near his sidearm, and Lisa was discreetly scanning everything with her handheld device. Eric seemed fascinated by the alien's physiology. They followed Drexvor through winding corridors. Frank tried to memorize the route, but the passages all looked the same. After several minutes, they entered a large, circular room with a table in the center. "Please be seated," Drexvor said, gesturing to the chairs. "We have much to discuss." As they moved toward the table, Frank noticed other Rexians entering the room from different doorways. There were 6 of them now surrounding the humans. "Before we begin," Frank said, "I should tell you that our ship is expecting regular check-ins. If they don't hear from us, they'll assume something is wrong." Drexvor's mouth stretched into what might have been a smile, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "No need for concerns, Captain. Your crew is already being taken care of." A screen on the wall activated, showing the USS Horizon. As they watched, a beam of energy shot from the Rexian ship, cutting through the human vessel. The Horizon broke apart, debris and bodies spilling into the vacuum of space. "No!" Frank lunged forward, but was immediately restrained by 2 Vrexians. Around him, his team struggled against their captors. "What is the meaning of this?" Frank demanded, fury and grief making his voice shake. Drexvor circled the restrained humans, examining them like specimens. "You should feel honored, Captain. Not all species qualify for our hunt, but humans. You show promise. Adaptable, resilient, inventive. You'll provide excellent sport." "Hunt?" Eric asked, his face pale. "We are hunters, Dr. Taylor," Drexvor said. "We seek worthy prey throughout the galaxy. Your species has caught our attention. We will release you on our game preserve moon, give you a head start, and then the hunt will begin." Jack spat at the alien's feet. "You've made a mistake. Humans aren't prey." Drexvor seemed amused. "That's what they all say. But in the end, all prey runs." He gestured to his subordinates. "Prepare them for stasis. When they wake, the game will begin." As the humans were dragged away, Frank caught Lisa's eye. There was fear there, but also determination. They weren't going to die without a fight. The last thing Frank saw before the sedative took effect was Drexvor leaning over him, those yellow eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Rest well, human," the alien whispered. "You'll need your strength. No prey has ever survived a Vrexian hunt, but we do so enjoy it when they try." Darkness claimed him, but one thought remained. The Vrexians had made a fatal error. They wanted to hunt humans. They had no idea they had just unleashed their worst nightmare. Frank woke up with a pounding headache, cold stone pressed against his back. He opened his eyes slowly, finding himself in a small cell with gray walls and a faint blue force field covering the entrance. The memories rushed back. The alien ship, the Vrexians, the destruction of the Horizon and its crew. He sat up quickly, fighting a wave of dizziness. The cell was bare except for a small metal shelf that served as a bed. A strange device was attached to his wrist, some kind of metal bracelet that glowed with tiny lights. "Hello?" he called out. "Lisa, Jack, Eric, can anyone hear me?" "Captain Miller." Lisa's voice came from somewhere to his right. "I'm here. In another cell, I think." "I'm here too," Eric's voice added from further away. "Same," Jack responded from the left. "Been awake for about an hour. Been looking for a way out." Frank examined the force field. It hummed with energy, creating a transparent blue wall that sealed the cell. Beyond it, he could see a corridor with similar cells lining the opposite wall. "Where are we?" Frank asked. "The game preserve moon they mentioned," Lisa replied. "I heard the guards talking. They call it Karthos. It's a specially designed hunting ground." "Any sign of the Vrexians?" Frank asked, moving closer to the force field. "They come through every few hours," Jack said, checking on prisoners. "We're not alone, Captain. There are other species here too. I've seen at least 3 different types of aliens in nearby cells." Frank tried to push his hand through the force field but pulled back with a painful shock. "We need to find a way out of these cells." "Already working on it," Jack said. "These bracelets seem to be connected to the force fields. They're tracking devices too, I bet." Hours passed as they tested the limits of their prison. Frank discovered that by watching the guards' movements, they could learn the patterns of the security system. When two Vrexian guards brought food, strange purple cubes that tasted like stale bread, Frank tried to engage them. "How long before the hunt begins?" he asked one guard. The reptilian alien looked at him with those unsettling yellow eyes. 3 rotations. Enjoy your final days, human." After the guards left, a soft voice spoke from a cell across the corridor. "You are the new ones, the human species." Frank moved to the edge of his cell. In the dim light, he could make out a tall, thin figure with an exoskeleton and 4 arms. Its head was insect-like with compound eyes that reflected the light. "Yes," Frank replied. "I'm Captain Frank Miller. Who are you?" "I am Ziktal," the insectoid being said. "Last of my capture group. The others were all hunted." "How long have you been here?" Lisa asked from her cell. 7 cycles, Ziktal replied. "I have learned to survive. The Rexians enjoy the chase, so I never stay in one place. They consider me a worthy challenge now." "Can you help us escape these cells?" Jack asked. Ziktal made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. "The cells open automatically when the hunt begins. They want you to run. It's no sport otherwise." "And when does the next hunt begin?" Frank asked. "Soon. They're excited about your species. They've never hunted humans before." Lisa spoke up. "What makes the Vrexians such effective hunters?" "They see heat signatures. They're stronger than most species. Their weapons can paralyze or kill. But they're not invincible," Ziktal explained. "They rely too much on technology, and they're arrogant." "That's something we can use," Frank said thoughtfully. 2 more rotations passed. During that time, they learned more about their situation from Ziktal and met other prisoners. There was Quartz, a crystalline being that could refract energy and light. It communicated through patterns of light that Lisa managed to interpret. And Mist, a gaseous entity that could change density at will, contained in a special cell with atmospheric controls. On the 3rd rotation, as predicted, the force field suddenly disappeared. A siren wailed throughout the facility. "It begins," Ziktal said, stepping out of its cell. "Follow me if you want to survive the first day." The humans rushed out, joining Ziktal in the corridor. Jack helped Eric, who was still weak from the stasis. "The Vrexians give a head start," Ziktal explained as they ran. 6 hours before they release the hunters. We must reach the forest before then." They followed the insectoid through a series of corridors until they reached a large door that opened to the outside. The sight took their breath away. The sky was a deep purple with 2 small moons visible despite the daylight. Before them stretched a vast landscape that seemed designed to offer both cover and challenges. Dense forests to the east, mountains to the north, swampland to the west, and open plains to the south. "It's artificial," Lisa said, studying the environment. "An engineered ecosystem." "Yes," Ziktal confirmed. "Different zones for different hunts. The forest offers the best protection." They ran toward the tree line, moving as quickly as possible across the open ground. Other escaped prisoners scattered in different directions. Frank saw strange bird-like creatures take to the sky, and something with multiple legs burrowing into the ground. Once they reached the forest, Ziktal led them deeper in, following what seemed to be a hidden trail. "I have places," the alien explained. "Hidden shelters. The hunters don't know all of them." They reached a hollow beneath a massive fallen tree, concealed by dense vegetation. Inside, Ziktal had created a living space with crude tools, containers of water, and what appeared to be dried food. "Rest," Ziktal told them. "Then we plan." As they settled in the hiding place, Lisa examined their wrist devices. "These aren't just trackers," she said. "They're monitoring our vital signs too. Heart rate, body temperature. They're studying us while they hunt." "Can we remove them?" Eric asked. "Not without triggering an alarm, I suspect," she replied. "But maybe we can use them to our advantage." Jack was checking the surroundings, eyes alert for any threat. "We need weapons, and a better strategy than just running and hiding." Frank nodded. "Ziktal, What can you tell us about the hunters' patterns? Their weaknesses? The insectoid settled on a rock. They hunt in groups of 2 or 3. They prefer to corner their prey, to see fear before the kill. Their armor protects against most physical attacks, but their joints are vulnerable. As night fell, strange glowing plants provided dim light in the forest. The group sat in a circle, planning their survival. Humans are different, Lisa said suddenly. Our physiology, our endurance. On Earth, early humans used to practice persistence hunting, chasing prey, until it collapsed from exhaustion. So? Jack asked. So maybe we can outlast them. Humans evolved to run long distances. We can sweat to cool down. Most species can't do that. Frank considered this. We're not just prey, we're predators too. Zictal's compound eyes reflected the dim light. None have ever successfully hunted a Vrexian. Then we'll be the first, Frank said firmly. In the distance, they heard a horn blow, a deep, resonating sound that echoed through the forest. The hunters have been released, Zictal said quietly. Frank looked at his team, the scientist, the doctor, the security officer, and at their unlikely alien ally. They were trapped on a hostile moon, being hunted for sport. But the Vrexians had made one critical mistake. They thought humans were prey. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The morning sun cast dappled light through the forest canopy. Frank and his team had slept in shifts, always keeping watch. Now they gathered around a crude map that Zictal had drawn in the dirt, showing the main areas of the game preserve, the Yer. Vrexians will have landed by now, Zictal said, pointing to a clearing marked on the map. They always begin at the central hub. 7 hunters, including Drexvor, their leader. 7 against 5, Jack said, checking the sharp wooden spear he had made overnight. Not great odds. We need to split up, Frank decided. Make it harder for them to track us all at once. Lisa had been examining the local plant life since dawn. She held up a dark purple leaf. I think this could be useful. The structure is similar to toxins that affect cold-blooded species on Earth. The Vrexians are reptilian. Can you make something from it? Frank asked. Lisa nodded. With Eric's help, we could create a paste that might slow them down if it gets into their bloodstream. Good. Get working on that. Frank turned to the others. Jack, I want you to set traps along the likely approach routes. Nothing lethal yet. We need to study how they react, learn their weaknesses. I can help with that, Zictal offered. I know their hunting patterns. What about me? Asked Quartz, the crystalline being who had joined them during the night. Its body glittered in the sunlight as it formed words through light patterns. You can refract light, right? Frank asked. When Quartz confirmed this, he continued. Perfect. You can help us create distractions, maybe even redirect their energy weapons. The gaseous entity Mist floated nearby, its form swirling with anticipation. I will scout, it whispered in a barely audible voice. They cannot detect me if I disperse enough. With their plan in place, the group separated. Jack and Zictal went to set traps. Lisa and Eric gathered plants and worked on their toxin. Quartz positioned itself at a vantage point, and Mist drifted away to scout. Frank climbed a tall tree to get a better view of the surrounding area. From his perch, Frank could see much of the forest and the mountains beyond. In the distance, a small craft descended toward the central clearing. The Vrexian hunting party had arrived. Hours passed as they prepared. Jack returned, covered in dirt, but satisfied with his work. I've set snares, pitfalls, and a few surprise packages, he reported. Nothing they'll expect from prey. Lisa and Eric had created a dark paste that they applied to the tips of their wooden spears. It won't kill them, Lisa explained, but it should cause painful muscle spasms if it gets into their bloodstream. The sun reached its peak, Mist returned, its gaseous form condensing enough to communicate. They come. 4 groups, 2 hunters in each, except Drexvor, who hunts alone. They're splitting up to cover more ground, Frank noted. That works for us. We take them one by one. They took positions around the area where Jack had set his traps. Frank, Jack, and Zictal each hid in different spots, while Lisa and Eric remained further back, Quartz positioned itself where it could reflect light to signal the others. The weight was tense. Frank controlled his breathing, trying to keep his heart rate steady. He knew the wristband was monitoring his vitals, potentially giving away his position if he showed fear. A flash of light from Quartz's position alerted them. The Vrexians were coming. Frank caught glimpses of two tall figures moving through the forest. They wore armor that seemed to shift colors, blending with the surroundings, but their movement gave them away. The Vrexians moved with confidence, scanning the forest floor for tracks. They carried long rifle-like weapons and had smaller devices attached to their arms, likely scanners. One of the hunters stepped directly onto the spot Jack had prepared. There was a snap as the ground gave way beneath it, sending the Vrexian tumbling into a pit lined with sharpened stakes. The alien let out a hissing roar of pain and surprise. The second hunter immediately raised its weapon, scanning the surroundings. It clicked something into its wrist device, likely calling for backup. This was the moment Frank had been waiting for. He signaled to Jack with a bird call they had practiced. Jack responded, then threw a rock far to the right. As the hunter turned toward the sound, Frank burst from his hiding place and threw his spear with all his strength. The makeshift weapon struck the Vrexian in the joint of its armor near the shoulder. The alien howled and turned, firing its weapon. A burst of energy scorched the tree where Frank had been a moment before, but he was already moving, circling around. Jack attacked from the other side, his military training evident in his precise movements. He landed a solid hit with his spear, driving Lisa's toxin into the hunter's exposed neck. The effect was immediate. The Vrexian's movements became jerky, its coordination failing. It tried to aim its weapon but couldn't hold it steady. From the pit, the other hunter was climbing out, injured but dangerous. Ziktal moved with surprising speed, using all four arms to hurl stones at the wounded alien, keeping it off balance. Frank grabbed a fallen branch and charged, swinging it like a club. He connected with the second hunter's head, knocking it back into the pit. There was a sickening sound as the alien landed on the stakes again. The first hunter, affected by Lisa's toxin, stumbled and fell to one knee. Jack didn't hesitate. He grabbed the alien's own weapon and figured out the trigger, sending a burst of energy through the Vrexian's chest. The hunter collapsed, dead. "One team down," Frank said grimly. They quickly gathered around the pit. The second hunter was still alive but badly injured. Frank looked down at the alien, seeing fear in those yellow eyes, perhaps for the first time in the Vrexian's life. "You are not like the others," the hunter gasped. "No, we're not," Frank agreed. "Tell us how to contact your ship, how to end this hunt." The Vrexian laughed, a wet, gurgling sound. "Drexvor will never end the hunt. You are good prey." "We're not prey," Jack said coldly, "and you're about to find that out." A distant howl echoed through the forest. Another Vrexian team. Discovering one of Jack's traps, the group exchanged glances. "We need to move," Frank ordered. "Grab that weapon and anything else useful." Jack collected the dead hunter's weapon and equipment. Lisa quickly examined the technology, her scientific curiosity evident despite the circumstances. "Their comm system," she said, holding up a small device from the hunter's wrist. "We can listen in on their communications." As they retreated deeper into the forest, Frank heard the Vrexians coordinating their efforts through the captured device. They sounded concerned, even angry. The hunters were not used to becoming the hunted. "They're calling for more aggressive tactics," Lisa translated. "Drexvor is furious." "Good," Frank said. "Anger leads to mistakes." As night began to fall, they met up with Quartz and regrouped in another of Ziktal's hidden shelters. Their small victory had given them confidence, but they knew the real battle was just beginning. "They're releasing something," Mist reported, returning from another scouting mission. "Creatures, not Vrexians, some kind of predators." Frank nodded grimly. "They're changing the rules. We hit them harder than they expected." "What's our next move?" Eric asked, tending to a cut on Jack's arm. Frank looked at his team, at the alien allies who had joined their fight. Now we show them that humans don't just survive. We win. 3 days had passed since their first victory against the Vrexian hunters. Frank and his team had been constantly on the move, staying one step ahead of both the hunters and the strange predators that had been released into the preserve. These creatures resembled large wolves but with scaled skin and 6 legs, hunting in packs and communicating through high-pitched calls. The group had made camp in a cave system that Zichtal knew about, deep in the mountain region of the preserve. Here they had gathered more allies, survivors from other captured species who had managed to evade the Vrexians. There were now 15 of them in total, a small army of the hunted. "We can't keep running forever," Frank said to the assembled group. "We need to take the fight to them." Jack nodded in agreement, cleaning the Vrexian energy weapon they had captured. "We've taken down 3 hunting teams so far. There's only Drexvor and 1 other team left." Lisa had been working with Eric to create more effective weapons using the local resources and what they'd learned about Vrexian biology. "I've been studying their communication patterns," she said. "All orders come from a central command ship in orbit. That's how they coordinate the hunt." "Can we contact it?" Frank asked. "Better," Lisa replied. "I think we can use their own communications against them, send false signals, maybe even locate the ship." Samantha, who had been examining pieces of Vrexian technology, looked up. "If we can get to their landing craft, I might be able to create a device that disrupts their armor systems, like an EMP pulse." Frank turned to the alien survivors. "We need to know more about other groups still hiding in the preserve. More allies mean more chances of success." A tall, slender alien with 4 eyes stepped forward. "My people hide in the swamps. At least 10 of us remain. They will join your resistance if you can prove we have a chance. And my kind burrow in the northern ridge," added a stocky being with thick, armored skin. 7 strong fighters waiting for the right moment. Zichtal clicked its mandibles thoughtfully. "The Vrexians have hunted here for generations. Many prisoners remain hidden. With the right signal, they will rise." Frank looked at the makeshift map they had created of the preserve. "Then we need to send that signal, something so big that everyone will know the game has changed." They planned through the night. Jack worked with several of the stronger aliens to create a militia, teaching them human combat tactics and how to use the weapons they had captured. Lisa and Zichtal studied the Vrexian communication devices, looking for weaknesses. Samantha gathered materials for her disruption device. As dawn broke, Mist returned from a scouting mission with important news. "I found an abandoned Vrexian facility in the eastern sector. It appears to be a research station." This was the break they needed. Frank organized a small team, himself, Lisa, and Zichtal, to investigate while the others continued preparations for their larger plan. The facility was hidden in a rocky outcropping, its entrance overgrown with vegetation. Inside they found laboratories and equipment left behind, perhaps from an earlier hunting season. Lisa immediately began examining the computer systems. "This is incredible," she said, her eyes wide with excitement. "These are schematics of the entire preserve. And look, information about a central control hub on the western side of the moon." "What kind of control hub?" Frank asked, looking over her shoulder. "It seems to control the environment, weather, terrain features, even gravity in some sectors. The Vrexians can change the conditions to make the hunt more challenging." Zichtal examined other parts of the facility. "There are weapons here too. Older models but functional. They loaded as much as they could carry and returned to the cave system. With the new information and resources, their plan began to take shape." 5 more days passed. The resistance group grew as word spread among the prisoners. Samantha successfully created several EMP-like devices that could temporarily disable Vrexian battle armor. Jack's militia now numbered over 30 fighters from 12 different species. The counterattack began with simultaneous strikes on Vrexian outposts scattered throughout the preserve. Teams led by Jack and some of the more experienced alien fighters overwhelmed the minimal security, capturing more weapons and equipment. Frank led the main assault on the control hub they had discovered. With Lisa, Samantha, and a team of 10 fighters, They approached from multiple directions, using the environment to mask their movements. The hub was heavily guarded, but the Vrexians weren't expecting an organized attack. When Samantha's EMP devices detonated, the guards found their armor systems failing, their movements restricted to their natural abilities. The fighting was intense. 2 of their alien allies fell, but the assault team pushed forward. Frank led from the front using both captured Vrexian weapons and improvised tools to devastating effect. Inside the control center, Lisa and Samantha went to work on the systems while Frank and the others held off reinforcements. On the main communication channel, they could hear Drexvor's angry orders, calling for more hunters to be sent down from the orbiting command ship. "That's it," Frank said, hearing the transmission. "That's where they're keeping the prisoners, who haven't been released yet." The command ship. Through the hub's monitors, they could see the chaos spreading across the preserve as more prisoners joined the uprising. The hunters were now the hunted, surrounded and outnumbered by those they had once considered mere prey. "I've got access to their systems," Lisa announced. "I can control the environment now." "And I found their transport controls," Samantha added. "There's a Vrexian dropship docked on the other side of the facility." Frank made a quick decision. "We need to get to that ship. If we can reach the command vessel in orbit, we can end this once and for all." As they fought their way to the docking bay, Quartz suddenly moved in front of Lisa, its crystalline body intercepting an energy blast meant for her. The beam refracted through its form, splitting into dozens of smaller beams that scattered across the room. Quartz's structure began to crack, small pieces falling to the floor. "Go," it said through a pattern of fading lights. "Finish this." Lisa hesitated, but Frank pulled her away. "Its sacrifice won't be for nothing," he promised. They reached the dropship as Quartz's last light faded. The alien had given its life to save Lisa, to give them all a chance at freedom. With Samantha at the controls, deciphering the alien technology on the fly, the dropship lifted off. Behind them, the control hub erupted in flames as the last of their team activated the self-destruct sequence they had set. As they rose into the purple sky, Frank looked out at the game preserve below. Fires burned in multiple locations. The prisoners were taking back the moon, sector by sector. "Drexvor is still out there," Jack said, checking the weapons they had brought aboard. "Not for long," Frank replied, his expression determined. "He wanted a hunt. We're bringing it to him." The dropship accelerated toward the stars where the faint outline of the Vrexian command ship waited. Their final battleground. The dropship approached the Vrexian command vessel, a massive structure that hung in orbit above the game preserve moon. Samantha guided their stolen craft toward a secondary docking bay, away from the main hangar where activity was highest. "They're scrambling ships," she reported, looking at the scanner. "They know something's wrong, but they don't seem to have identified us as enemies yet." Frank nodded. "Good. We use that confusion. Remember the plan. We find the control center, free any captives still in stasis, and take over the ship." "And Drexvor?" Jack asked, checking his weapon. "He's mine," Frank said, his voice hard. The memory of his crew on the horizon, of Quartz's sacrifice, fueled his determination. The dropship docked with a gentle thud. Samantha had managed to send the correct identification codes, buying them precious time before the Vrexians realized they had been infiltrated. They split into 2 teams. Frank, Jack, and Zigtal would head for the bridge to confront the command staff. Lisa, Eric, and Samantha would locate the prisoner storage area where captives were kept in stasis until they were needed for the hunt. The corridors of the command ship were wider than those of the hunting vessel they had first encountered. The walls pulsed with the same organic-like technology, but here it was more refined, more elegant. Frank's team moved quietly, encountering only minimal resistance. Most of the crew seemed focused on the situation on the moon below, unaware of the threat already aboard their ship. "The Vrexians are arrogant," Zigtal whispered as they hid from a passing patrol. "They cannot imagine being invaded by prey." They reached a large door that Zigtal identified as the entrance to the bridge. Jack placed one of Samantha's remaining EMP devices on the door mechanism. Ready? Frank asked. Both nodded. Then, let's end this. The EMP triggered, shorting out the door controls. Jack kicked the malfunctioning door open and they rushed inside. The bridge was spacious, with viewing screens showing different sectors of the game-preserved moon. 6 Vrexian officers turned in surprise as the intruders burst in. Frank fired the captured energy weapon, taking down the nearest officer. Jack and Zikatal engaged the others. The fight was brief but intense. The Vrexians were strong but unprepared for such an assault on their own bridge. When it was over, 5 officers lay dead or unconscious. The 6th was cornered, his back to the command console. "Where is Drexvor?" Frank demanded. The Vrexian hissed in defiance. "The Grand Hunter is already heading back to the preserve. He will restore order." Frank pressed the weapon against the alien's scaled neck. "Tell me how to lock down this ship and give me access to all communications." Meanwhile, Lisa's team had made their way deeper into the vessel. Using the schematics they had discovered in the abandoned facility, they navigated toward the storage areas. "There," Lisa said, pointing to a massive door at the end of a corridor. "That should be it." They approached cautiously. The door was unlocked. The Vrexians had no reason to secure it inside their own ship. Inside, they found what they were looking for. Hundreds of stasis pods lined the walls of a chamber that stretched farther than they could see. Each pod contained a being from one of dozens of species, preserved until the Vrexians decided it was time for them to be hunted. "This is worse than we thought," Eric whispered. "There must be thousands of prisoners here." Samantha went to a control panel. "I think I can wake them, but not all at once. It would overwhelm the life support systems." "Start with the ones closest to completion," Lisa suggested. The ones they were preparing to send down to the preserve. As Samantha worked, Lisa examined the Vrexian database. "It's all here. Records of every species they've captured, every hunt they've conducted. This has been going on for centuries." Back on the bridge, Frank had forced the Vrexian officer to give them control of the ship's systems. Jack monitored the communications, listening to the increasingly desperate reports from the hunters on the moon below. "The prisoners have taken control of 3 sectors," he reported. "The remaining hunters are falling back to the central hub, but that's already been destroyed." Frank opened a channel to the moon. "This is Captain Frank Miller. The command ship is under our control. All prisoners, all hunted. You are free. The game is over." He was about to continue when alarms blared across the bridge. Ziktal checked a scanner. "A ship is approaching from the moon. Small, fast." "Drexvor," Frank said grimly. "He's coming to us." The Grand Hunter's vessel docked forcefully with the command ship. On the security monitors, they could see Drexvor emerge, his armor more elaborate than the other hunters, his movements radiating fury. "Lock down all sections between him and the bridge," Frank ordered. "Jack, go help Lisa's team. Zikatal and I will deal with Drexvor." Jack hesitated. "Captain, go," Frank insisted. "Make sure those prisoners get free." After Jack left, Frank turned to Ziktal. "You don't have to stay for this." The insectoid alien's compound eyes gleamed. 7 cycles I have waited for this moment. I will see it end." Drexvor reached the bridge faster than they expected, cutting through locked doors, with a weapon built into his armor. When the final door fell, he stepped through, his yellow eyes fixing immediately on Frank. "Human," he hissed. "You have provided the greatest hunt in generations." "It's over, Drexvor," Frank said, leveling his weapon. "Your hunters are defeated. Your prisoners are free." The Vrexian's mouth formed what might have been a smile. "Nothing is over while I still stand. And when I am done with you, I will hunt down every last one of your kind." Drexvor moved with startling speed, knocking Frank's weapon aside. Frank rolled with the impact, coming up in a fighting stance. The Vrexian was stronger, but Frank was quicker, more adaptable. The fight was brutal. Drexvor's armor gave him an advantage, but Frank exploited the joints, the weak points they had discovered in their earlier encounters. Ziktal joined the fight, using all 4 arms to distract and harass the Vrexian. In a crucial moment, Frank fell back, appearing to tire. Drexvor pressed his advantage, moving in for the kill. It was the opening Frank needed. As the Vrexian lunged, Frank sidestepped and drove a blade fashioned from Brexian technology deep into the hunter's exposed neck. Drexvor staggered, yellow blood seeping from the wound. "Impossible," he gasped. "You are prey." "That was your mistake," Frank said, watching as the Grand Hunter collapsed. "Humans were never prey. We were always predators." With Drexvor defeated, they secured the bridge. Jack returned with news that Lisa and Samantha had begun waking the prisoners and had found the ship's communication array. "We're broadcasting evidence of the Vrexians' hunting practices to every frequency we can find," Lisa reported over the comm, "showing what they've done here." Within hours, ships began to appear at the edge of the system, vessels from other species who had lost members to the Vrexians' hunts. A coalition formed quickly, surrounding the game preserve and offering aid to the freed prisoners. 1 week later, Frank stood on the bridge of an alien vessel that had offered to take the human survivors home. Beside him stood Lisa, Jack, Eric, and Samantha looking out at the stars. "What will happen to the Vrexians?" Lisa asked. "The coalition is dismantling their hunting operations," Frank replied. "They'll face justice from the species they've harmed." "And us?" Jack wondered. "What? Do we tell Earth about all this?" Frank considered the question. "We tell them the truth, that we're not alone in the universe, that there are dangers out there but also allies, and that when put to the test, humanity proved itself." As their ship turned toward Earth, representatives from a dozen grateful species came to thank them. One tall, dignified alien stepped forward. "We have created a new law among our worlds," it said. "No sentient being shall ever be hunted again. It will be known as the Human Protection Edict." Frank shook his head. "Not just human. Protection for all sentient life." The alien nodded in respect. "You could have sought revenge. Instead, you sought justice. That's what makes us human," Frank said, looking back at his team. "We can be the worst nightmare of those who threaten us, but we can also be better than our enemies ever imagined." As Earth grew from a distant point of light to a blue jewel in the darkness, Frank thought of all they had endured and all they had learned. The Vrexians had trapped and hunted them, never realizing they were unleashing something they couldn't control. Not just human strength or intelligence, but human compassion, human justice, and human hope. These, in the end, were the most powerful weapons of all.